I don't know. Say it with me. I don't know. Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 167 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, I converse with Kamaria Powell. Kamaria G. Powell was one of those individuals who never felt like one religion was right for her. So she filled her shopping cart of faith with whatever she liked from a variety of religions and cultures. She expanded her own definition of what it means to be spiritual. Kamaria was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. She received her bachelor's degree in psychology at UMass Dartmouth and went on to receive her master's degree in education at UMass Boston. In her new book, What the Fuck is Enlightenment?, Kamaria challenges readers to take their spiritual identity into their own hands. By candidly illustrating her own life experiences, flaws and all, she demonstrates how a chaotic, mundane life can be transformed into a more purposeful and dynamic one through the process of self-discovery and finding your own unique spirituality. Unfortunately, Bob had to leave town suddenly the weekend that we recorded this due to family bereavement. However, he listened to the interview and he and I discuss it at the end. Before we get into my talk with Kamaria, a brief word. We as a species are pussies. We're cowards, we're scaredy cats. It's not a bad thing, it's just how we are. And the things we are afraid of are a big deal and worthy of fear, so no condemnation. We find ourselves here on this planet, entrusted to these parents, surrounded by these friends, co-students, co-workers, etc. We didn't ask for any of this. We had no control over any of it. We have little control over anything, including ourselves and our circumstances. We're powerful creatures with nowhere to exert our power. The world, the weather, and whatnot does not care about us. It is unmoved by our most severe protests or tantrums. Hell, our best friends can't or won't change to please us or suit our desires. Why would Father Time? We're all going to die. We humans are unique because we're the only creatures that know that we will someday die and that our death can occur at any time in a way that we cannot control. We're animals, breathing pieces of defecating meat, no more significant than lizards or potatoes. Fuck, that's a horrible existence. Let's admit it. This life is a fucking disaster, and we're all in the same boat. No one got to choose their body, their life, their zip code. No one is better or more powerful than anyone else, except in ways that we've constructed to differentiate ourselves from others. Competitions, caste systems, economies, identifiers like skin color, religion, gender, interests, hobbies. We come right out of the womb with judgmental contact lenses on our eyes that teach us to say over and over again our entire lives, this is not okay. There has to be more than this. I deserve better. I matter, goddammit, and we do matter. But we do well to figure out exactly how much we matter and align ourselves with that truth. And the truth is, it's not that much. We matter to the people we're sharing life with, but they're going to die around the same time we do, so we really don't matter in the big scheme of things. So how should we respond to the reality that life's a bitch and then you die? Can't we muster a little spite, a little orneriness, a little rebel that kicks life in the dick and says, "Oh yeah, you want to ignore me? You want to make me miserable? Well, I have a different idea. How about I have fun anyway? How about I laugh at this whole circumstance and find something interesting within it to do and do that?" We have a giant imagination, but we waste it fantasizing how the world should be, how our lover should be, how long this stoplight should be, how smart the bank teller should be, how rare our steak should be, how fast the car in front of us should be going, how good this movie should be, how our children should behave, none of which we have any control over. Let's try using our powerful imagination to figure out ways to say yes to what is. Yes saying can be an arduous concept to ingest. I've said it virtually every week on this show for 3 years. That's over 150 times. And some of you have started to get it. Hell, I'm just starting to get it. Some of you think it's nonsense, and it's only afforded to me because of all my privileges. I'm a white, straight, male, non-handicapped, and handsome in America in the 21st century. But please be slow to reject it based on what you think you know of it. It mostly applies to the big picture perspective of life and reality. It acknowledges 2 things. 1, life is hard. 2, it only gets harder when you wish it were different, or deny it, or say no to it. No saying holds on to a belief that perfection exists, or that flaws are bad. It places judgment of good or evil on that which is unresponsive to judgment. Conversely, yes saying is wanting to operate from as many true assumptions as possible and the least amount of untruths as possible. It is a difficult work, a life's work, in fact, discovering how and when one's life and values are shaped by lies and delusions. Yes saying is the slow and steady removal of blind spots, which is not knowing what you don't know, nor that you don't know it. Yes saying is infused with the concept of art, which is above right or wrong proclamations. We don't get to evaluate the Big Bang or hold up an Olympic scorecard to the random absurdity of life that is unfolding before us. It just is. And the only world I want to engage with is this one, the real one. I want to stop wishing it was something different than what it is. I want to join the human race and align with reality. I don't have to like it or agree with it. And in those cases, I'll add a word to yes saying, and that's the word and. Yes, and. For example, if I wake up with a headache, or I have to go to a job that I don't like, or my friends aren't calling me as much as I wish they would, or my car is a piece of shit, I don't give in to no saying by stomping my feet, crossing my arms, and crying out like a 2-year-old, "No, this is not okay." I start with yes. I acknowledge that it is happening, and that I'm powerless to wish it away. It's not budging. It cares nothing about how I feel about it. I'm powerless to change it, so I start with yes. And then I say, and. Yes, I have a headache, and I'm going to take a painkiller. Yes, I hate my job, and I'm going anyway, and I'll find ways to make it fun, or I'll find another one. Yes, I'm going to die someday, and I'm not going to forfeit what little power I do have to make some needed changes to enhance my experience while I'm here. Yes saying is pretty much the serenity prayer penned by Reinhold Niebuhr, and I'll rephrase it here without God and add a little bit of Nietzsche in there if you'll notice. I'm going to exercise the serenity to say yes to the things I cannot change. I'm going to exercise courage to change the things that I can. And I'm going to have the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking this fucked up world as it is, not as I wish it was, trusting that that which does not kill me will make me stronger, that I may be reasonably happy in this life. Amen. Given the absolute unfairness of life and the fact that no God is looking out for any of us, a reasonably happy life is about the best anyone could hope for. So we would do well to buckle up, grow up. Life is hard, and it only gets harder the more we deny it, reject it, or wish it was something other than what it is. We taped this conversation with Kamaria Powell on August 19th, 2017. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. You can subscribe to our podcast on whatever app you're using on your phone. They're available on most podcast platforms. Also, you can support us monetarily in two easy ways. You can pledge $1 per episode or more through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast. Or you can leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated. If you're a listener to this podcast and would like to be added to the private support group on Facebook, please friend me on Facebook, private message me that you would like to be added, and give me a brief description of your relationship to this podcast. The group is confidential, so I do screen applicants briefly. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode is a rendition of Stevie Wonder's Higher Ground by Dave Weckl and Jay Oliver. Thank you for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is. All right, Kamaria G. Powell, author of What the Fuck is Enlightenment? Also a blogger. You're originally from Boston. I did a little reading up on you.
Yes.
Where are you calling from now?
Boston.
Oh, you're still in Boston. Okay.
Yep, I'm still in Boston.
I think when I was trying to Skype you, I think I was trying to, it was a different Kamaria Powell.
Oh, that could be. Yeah. There is another one out there.
Yeah. And, you know, for us white people, all you black people look alike, so.
Of course.
It just cut right to the chase, right? We're in the thick of post-Charlottesville. Now, by the time this airs, it'll be a month later, but hopefully the world has calmed down a little bit. But
we got flips coming, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's a rally in Boston and Atlanta and Dallas today.
Going on right now.
It's crazy. I think what I'm scared about is just how ignorant, I don't know where you stand politically, but how ignorant the president is to equate pushback against evil with the propulsion of evil. So we could, I mean, it's just like saying, well, the beach at Normandy, both sides were evil.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bizarre to see everything unfolding the way it is, you know, and having the president, somebody that you're supposed to be able to look up to and respect, not being able to do that. But I think that it really pushes it back on us that we have to take back our power, you know, at a grassroots level, and try to change this and see what we can do to create something completely new. We can't continue to put Band-Aids on things and expect it to change. We really have to start from the ground up and think about how we can completely create something new that hasn't been done before in order to proceed. I think that's the moment that we're in right now, to be honest.
Well, we can't do the same thing and expect different results.
Exactly.
And we also, I think we're discovering, we can't look to typical leadership to guide us or to unify us.
Right.
And so now it is back on the people. And I think, you know, everybody's kind of at a loss for like, well, what do I do? Do I punch Nazis? Do I blog against Nazis? Do I like something on Facebook? Do I get out on the streets and march? And I'd say all the above. But there is a feeling of like of maybe helplessness or hopelessness even in that. What good does little old me do? And one of the things that I've resolved to do is whereas before, well, you know what? I just occurred to me I was a hypocrite last night. I was going to say, whereas before I would let sleeping dogs lie, or if I got into a conversation with a bigot and he or she expressed her views, I would either just walk away or change the subject. Uh-huh. And it's not that I'm non-confrontational. Confrontation is kind of recreational for me when it's done among friends, but when it's done with strangers,
yeah, I'm
really uncomfortable correcting somebody, or trying to get into an argument with somebody because, well, just for the very fact that I don't know that either one of us are listening, for one, my mind's made up and their mind's probably made up, and it's just maybe going to put fuel on the fire. And I don't know. I mean, what is this? Some of these biblical things was heap burning coals on their heads, win them over with kindness and not with words. And, God damn it. It's hard to know. What do you think?
I think a lot of it sometimes we want that change to happen like immediately or overnight because we're seeing the pain, and we see a lot of people who want, who need that support, and our country, we need that right now. But I think we have to remember that it is a process, and that even though we want to do something to make it all right now, it's going to take a lot of people taking those small steps, like you said, and stepping out courageously. It's not easy to have courage. And to some degree, we all have been kind of like talking out of both sides of our mouths as far as, like you said, like, oh, I'm a hypocrite or whatever. I think that having the president that we have right now, it kind of sheds light on all of that. And for the first time, people are seeing it in themselves, and that's scary, and they're seeing their neighbors, and that's scary. And rather than like try to cover that up, it's really being exposed right now. And so we have to really think about how we're addressing it in every single moment. And that takes really heightened awareness that most of us aren't used to.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it takes some practice, and it takes a lot of those scenarios to come up to really see where you are and where you stand and what kind of stand you're willing to take. For some people, like you said, yeah, it's going out in the street and fighting the Nazis and doing that extreme behavior. And for some people, it might be continuing to write and to share their thoughts and beliefs on things and how they can change stuff. But I think that you just got to find where you are willing to stand up and to definitely to do that, because our country needs people to be vocal about this right now, you know?
And I think you've identified the main, if not the only silver lining of this presidency and this bigotry is it's come out of the closet. It's on full display. It's out in the light.
Absolutely. And I feel like if we didn't have a president the way that we had right now, those things would still be there, but they'd be hidden, right? People wouldn't feel so boldly to speak up out against it. So it'd still be there, but it'd be swept underneath the rug. And nothing gets healed that way, not in our own personal lives and not on a macro level with our government. It's something that has to be addressed in light, and that's what we're dealing with right now. And it's very uncomfortable, and we can all admit that it's very uncomfortable, but that can't stop us from making the progress that we need to make to build the future that we want.
Yeah. I'm going to reference a podcast that I listened to a while back, and it's by a guy named Malcolm Gladwell, and he is an author. I think he's Jewish. I don't know. But he did a podcast, and it was about kind of this backlash that just historically happens. That I think he made reference to like the first female president of Australia, and then there was like one of the first female painters, like artist painters in Great Britain in like 14, 15, 1600, some ancient thing where only men's paintings were ever put up at this particular palace or art gallery or something, and this woman, her painting got put up, and in both cases, the Australian president and this painting, the backlash was amazing. And here's his theory: is that whenever like closeted bigots have to kind of socially, they know that they look like an asshole if they came out and said the things that they think and believe in the secrecy of their own mind, and so they keep it low, and then. There is this gesture of like, okay, we're going to appoint the first female president of Australia. We're going to put up this painting from this woman in Great Britain. And then I think you know where I'm going with this in that Obama was first black president. In that these people, I think he calls it moral licensing, in that, all right, we gave you a bone. We threw you a bone. We gave you what you wanted. And now, since we let you escalate, since we let you, or maybe not even let, but since you got to win a war, a battle, and got your black president, got your female president, we're going to up the ante. And so it gives them, whereas before they might exercise more scrutiny or self-discipline about saying what they're really feeling, now they feel this licensing to like, okay, you're actually gonna have a black president, all right? Well, we're gonna, or they fear, and especially on a large scale, like we're seeing with all these underground hate groups that are chatting in their little bedrooms online, and now they're coming out on the streets. The bravery, or at least it's far from bravery. Fuck that. It's cowardice, but it's boldness. Let's just say that they're feeling emboldened because we gave you a black president, and now we're going to get ours.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's a big part of it. The fact that they now feel empowered because they have this voice that's willing to represent them in some ways, being the president that we have now, and I think that it's definitely like it's a scary time, and we want to strive for equality, and we want the things that started during the civil rights movement. We want all of those things, and I think we thought we achieved it. We thought that we achieved it, especially with getting a black president. It was like, okay, now maybe we've arrived. But I think that, one thing that I say is that learning happens in a spiral. And so sometimes it's not that you're going around in circles, but it's like you get another lesson, but at a different level, right?
I use that metaphor all the time. Oh my God. Well, like a spiral staircase, you are going in a circle, but you are not at the same level.
Exactly. And so we were, it seems like we're at the same place that we were during those civil rights movement, right? Like trying to fight for equality or whatever, but we're in a similar place, but we're at a different level now, right? Because now we're not fighting for like, oh, I can drink water at this spot and you can drink water at the same spot too. We're fighting for something completely different. And so I think that to keep that in mind will keep us hopeful, knowing, okay, we have made strides and we have made some progress. Yes, but this is a journey. So this is not something that, okay, we make this amount of progress and then we stop. No, this is reminding us that we have to continue to work for those things that even the founding fathers, I mean, when they said, those rights that we have, when they brought up those, equal...
Inalienable,
right, the inalienable rights, it's like, I think that they realize like how deep that is. And if they didn't realize how deep it is, it's like we're realizing how deep those words really mean, and to grasp that and truly live that, it takes a lot. It takes so much from to in order to build that, and it's worth the fight. I think it's definitely worth the fight.
For sure.
I've been seeing, people asking the question, can America ever be saved? The fact that that the foundation of America, is so muddled with things like slavery and what happened with, the Native Americans and stuff like that. Like, can America ever really be saved when its foundation is like that? And to that response, when I seen it, it was like a lot of people said, no, it cannot be saved.
We're doomed.
You cannot get it back. But I feel like it can, but we have to definitely build something completely new. We have to restructure our government. Yeah. So if that's what we're faced with now, if that's what this time is calling for us to do right now, then we better be in it for the long haul, because it's not going to be an overnight, take down a statue and everything is fine. That's not going to address the issues that were there to begin with. It's a start to take down the statue,
Yeah.
But it's definitely not going to be the hallmark that addresses the issue.
Yeah. Well, and I want to go back and clarify, or maybe even amend something. When I was talking about these haters feeling emboldened,
Yes.
I think it must not go without saying that it's fear. It's actually a reaction from fear.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't think is equitable with emboldened. Like if I see a lion and I run, that's not bold. That's just me doing what I got to do because I'm afraid. And so when Obama's president, or when Australia gets a female president, and I didn't really finish the story, but that story about the Australian female president is that she became president, and then in the parliament, like in the very room where these guys hash out legislation, there were senators and congressmen that were making reference to, I mean, they were caught, just a lot of feminine slurs. About the time of the month, or whatever. I don't know what all they were, but things that would never be said in Parliament before, and now they feel this moral licensing to be more vocal and vulgar,
right,
about their references to women. And again, it's a fear, especially if their agenda, is to remain in power. This is what privilege does. And so now we feel threatened, and we have to up our game. So I just wanted to make sure that I don't want to use any laudatory adjectives towards these people like bold or brave. I reserve those for people that deserve it. So it's just acting in fear. The second thing that you just said that comes to mind that I think I've got to say, and I know we're going to get on with the real content of this show because our show is not a political show, but I just, this is so fresh on my mind, and that is, I know this for a fact, and I'm sure you do too, especially the way you just referenced to America's treatment of the Native Americans, is that it's a fairly unpopular and maybe even very unspoken thing in the history books of how many, we broke over 300 treaties with the Native American people, just the whole issue of slavery, a lot of it is just glossed over in the history books. All right? Would we agree on that?
Absolutely.
There needs to be a whole lot more honest history. And I'm going to use a phrase. This is where the irony that I'm going for. I'm going to use this phrase, and you might recognize it coming out of the mouths of the alt-right this week. And that is, let's not whitewash history. So, you know what? I couldn't agree more. But history takes place in museums and books and schools. So all three of those places, maybe not so much museums. Museums are sometimes privately owned, and they feel a lot of liberty to say whatever they want. But I am a huge proponent of getting really, really, really honest about looking ourselves in the mirror as a country and as our history, and teaching our kids to have some humility about what it means to be an American. We have fucked up major over and over and over again. And our American pride, our patriotism, our nationalism, if you will, I hate nationalism, but should be based on facts and not just some book that blew smoke up our ass that we're the greatest nation in the world and we always have been, or whatever.
Right, and you'll be surprised at how obviously there's that historic bias, and it's really not until I was in college and taking a college course on Native American culture and history that I realized the depth at which these people's land was stolen from them, and the pain that it caused.
Oh yeah.
You always, as a kid, you hear about the programs, and they had this happy time together, and it seems like so much more glorious in Kumbaya than what it actually was. And it doesn't mean that we have to go and destroy kids' vision of, but I think that there comes a point where the truth has to be told, and it shouldn't be once you're an adult that you learn truth. Absolutely.
Yeah. So these people that are saying leave these Confederate statues up because they're a part of history.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to say so fucking loud and clear. Statues are not history communicators. They are ways of honoring and paying homage to heroes. Period.
Right, and what I heard too, I mean, when I was, listening to the dialogue surrounding the statues and everything like that, someone made a good point in that, the statue, it tells more about who made the statue than what the statue represents. It's like the person who built that statue and put that statue in the position that it was. It speaks more on them sometimes than it actually does on the person that it's been built to glorify. You know, it tells about what they honored and what they felt was sacred and worthy of remembering.
Yeah, and they went before the city council and said, "Can I please put this up on government property?"
Right. So that tells more about their values as opposed to what the history really entails.
That makes total sense because heroes are personal.
Yeah.
I mean, we might have a few national heroes, but everybody feels differently about them. No,
exactly.
So
somebody who I would put up on a pedestal might not be the same person you might feel
exactly
that connection to, and so we also have to keep that in mind as well.
I think it's a great point, and maybe we should have 0 statues on government property. Maybe, I don't know. Now, I did see this week somebody had put up a photo of a statue in, I think, England, somewhere in Europe, and it was a young black man, shirt off, handcuffs dangling because the chains had been broken, but they were still attached to his wrists. Mm-hmm. And it was a statue of a freed slave celebrating freedom. And as far as I know, we don't have one of those in the United States. I mean, maybe we do. I mean, it's a big country, but anyway, my point is that these motherfuckers that want to say let's tell the truth about history. I just want to say, listen to yourselves and put it where it belongs, which is in books and museums and schools. The statues, here's what we don't want to do. We do not want to praise or make heroes out of, in this case, not only just assholes, murderers, slave proponents, but traitors. This is the civil fucking war. Right. They're traitors. I mean, they fought against what is now the United States of America. They were against the concept of the United States of America. They wanted to be a divided state. Right. They wanted the rights to keep their slaves, and you Northerners, go fuck yourselves.
And I think at any point, that should be the unifying point. The fact that it's like, they wanted exactly the opposite of what we have today, which is a united, state, a united country. And so it's like, I think at the very least, that should be the uniting point. But
no,
it's not always the case.
Well, and I can't hardly get through an episode of my show without talking about my Bible, the book by Ernest Becker called Denial of Death. And
Denial of Death?
Yeah, Denial of Death. And his theory is that everybody subconsciously is just horrified by the notion of all of this, fading to black. And in that comes fear of meaninglessness, and so we seek to find meaning, and we look for not only immortality projects to convince ourselves that we're going to live forever, but in case that's truly a myth, then we look for ways to make our mark on the earth so that when we do die, a part of us remains, so that in some ways we're immortalized in memoriam. Right. And so we like to be a part of things, and nationalism and it just reveals a deep-seated human insecurity and the fear of death. And we look for ways to convince ourselves that we're winners, that we're strong, that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that can be being a Dallas Cowboy fan, or being a proud American, or it can be adopting a religion, anything to stave off your horror of your own death. And I think this speaks to the sentimentality in the South of like these Confederate statues represent Southern pride. It's part of our heritage. And we're in the South, and we like sweet tea on the porch, or, it's part of their culture and their validation and their community, because misery loves company and strength in numbers, groupthink, herd mentality. These are all things that comfort the scaredy cat, the insecure person, because they can anesthetize their own fear by saying, well, I'm a part of this this number one bowling league in Kentucky. And that gives them identity and validation. And so do these fucking monuments. I mean, so do these stories. And you know what? War stories have been a favorite of human literature for forever and always will be, as far as just let's tell the story about how this battle was won. I mean, look at Game of Thrones is the most popular TV show in the world right now. And It's all about battles. So we understand that battles are fascinating stories. And we can talk about Robert E. Lee and how he strategized and won, all of that. But you still don't have to erect a monument calling him a good person. That's all I'm saying. All right, we got to move on.
Yeah.
You want to say something in closure of this political section of the podcast?
Just continue to fight on the level that you can. Continue to push forward and don't lose hope, thinking that we're back to square one. We're not back at square one. We're building something that is completely new, and I would love for you to be a part of it if you're on the right side of history. Yeah.
That's true, and I will do what I can. And I think what you're saying is good, as far as just fight the battle that's right in front of you. Like what's right in front of you today.
Exactly.
And the reason I called myself a hypocrite last night was I was at a bar, and there was really loud music playing, and so I'm going to use that as my reason that I didn't want to talk to this guy, because it really would have been just like yelling and barely getting each other. But he's a friend of mine, and he pulled out the whole thing about we don't need to be taking down our. I'm sorry, that's literally how he talks. I'm in Nashville, so I'm in the South, and I literally just looked at him and kind of shrugged my shoulders, and I just didn't want to be there. So anyway, looking for opportunities to help and talk and open up dialogue, and obviously I'm not a pacifist entirely. I used to be when I was a Christian, but I am a peace lover, and I am a proponent of civility and discourse and diplomacy. So if we can do it, I just always want to respect the person I'm talking to and attack the fuck out of their ideas.
There you have it.
There you go. All right. So the premise of this show at 30 minutes into our interview, the premise of this show is that I was a evangelical pastor for the first 39 years of my life. I deconstructed my faith slowly over several years to the point where I became a full-blown atheist after several stair steps along the way, and a lot of Oprah spirituality in the meantime, and other things. But the point was it was painful and lonely, and I lost friends and family. I internally was turned upside down, not knowing what to believe, what to think, what's my meaning. I had to revisit all the ontological questions all over again, with more natural and scientific answers, most of which aren't half as comforting as you're going to live forever and be with somebody who loves you eternally in a immortal body, sinless nature, all that. The reality is that I'm basically a cockroach with a prefrontal cortex, and that's not very comforting. But anyway, so the listeners of our show and the guests that have come on have some kind of deconversion stories. And the comforting thing is just hearing someone else's story and the listeners going, oh, I'm not alone. That's really it in a nutshell. And I was approached about your book. And so if we could, maybe before we get into the book itself, Maybe a little background about, were you raised religious, and if so, what was the impact on your development, and how religious did you personally get?
Okay, so yes, I was raised religious from my mother, I should say, in a Pentecostal home. So we went to church, several times, as you do usually when you're Pentecostal Christian, and had, full devotion to the church, believed in speaking in tongues, believed in getting baptized with the Holy Ghost, like all of that. And so I followed those footsteps till I was about maybe late teenage years, I would say, which is usually around the time you start to question a lot of things. And so for me, the question came up, which was always in the back of my mind, was just like, how can I say that someone is condemned to hell, or how could someone be condemned to hell just because they don't believe in the things that I believe in, right?
Yeah.
Well, I always had a really hard time with that question because I feared hell like nobody's business. I would try to cross all my T's and dot all my I's because I was very afraid of going to hell. It was like a pervasive fear. And so the idea that someone else that would be their destination because they didn't believe what I believed was very, it didn't sit right with me at all. And so thankfully, I had a father who was not very religious and was kind of completely opposite from my mom in terms of going to church every Sunday and all of that stuff. Although I didn't live with my father in the same home, his ideologies influenced me, and so I began to just explore more. I stopped being so afraid of hell, and I just started to explore other cultures and other philosophies, and I actually began to like them, and practice certain things, and I felt really comfortable. I didn't feel afraid anymore of hell, and I'm not. I can say now, I don't have that fear hovering over me like I did before. So for me, by exploring other religions and seeing a lot of the commonalities in it, it allowed me to release the fear that I had, and I don't like to think of it as a loss of faith. I think of it more of an expanded version of my faith. Yeah,
good. I mean, we're always looking for ways to rephrase that because it does sound like it's a little negative and it's a little demeaning in that I failed at something or something.
Right.
So yeah, expanding your faith. And, when I was a Christian in certain circles, of course, with the Bible being canonized, you don't have the option to pick and choose or cherry pick what you can or cannot agree with. It's canonized. It's 100% God's word. Right. And a lot of people that are otherwise good people at heart, they have to hold their nose and eat the cauliflower or whatever, that they don't like on the plate because it's God's word and I don't understand. I don't even agree necessarily, but God is God and he knows what he's doing and he's wiser than us. And so we kind of have to give ourselves a lobotomy for a second and just say, okay, he hates gays, then I'm supposed to too, even though I've got a couple of friends that I really like. All this cognitive dissonance starts to happen. And when you give yourself license to go to a smorgasbord cafeteria or a salad bar where you get to choose whether you want cherry tomatoes or croutons, and you build your faith, there you go, expanding your faith. And some of these fundamentalists are going to say, well, that's not faith, that's not Christianity, and I don't care what they say for one thing, but it was giving ourselves license and permission to deconstruct, reconstruct, redefine, reinvent our own faith, can go from being something, not only a release from horror of hell and such, it can be scary because we always, I shouldn't say in absolutes, but often we get down that road and we think, oh my God, what have I done? I'm probably going to hell, and we have flashbacks, right?
Right, and I think that, you have to take that step, that first step, as scary as it is. You take that first step, and maybe you read something that's out of line with what you're supposed to
contraband.
Read. Or you just start to slowly build, and maybe you look into the history of how the Bible was formulated, of how they chose the Gospels, and it's they were the really ones who had the power as to directing thousands of years later what we believe today, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like, do you want to put your trust into those hands that formulated the Gospels of what we read today that's in the Bible, and how language has changed and how the words have been shifted in order to support a specific agenda? You could either go and say, I'm going to run from religion, and I kind of had that point too, where it was like, whenever anybody said anything religious to me, it kind of just turned me off, like, automatically. Mm-hmm. But it's now, I think that I look at it as everything has its purpose and everything is purposeful. And so even though, your walk may be, yes, you're going to follow the Bible 100%, or whatever your faith may be. It could be, Islam. It could be Buddhism. It could be any other faith. You might follow 100%. But it's asking yourselves those questions and not being afraid to explore those answers, and thinking like, yeah, there's nothing bad that I've learned that makes me feel that I'm doomed now. I think that, if anything, like I said, my faith has been expanded by all of the other religions and beliefs and philosophy that I've been able to explore. And so I think that if you just take that leap of faith, as funny as that sounds, that leap of faith and you go and you try to learn about somebody else's culture or learn about somebody else's philosophy and see if there's anything in that resonates with you. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the religion, if you take away the dogma, you take away the do nots and the shall nots, they're all saying the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They're saying the same thing. And I feel like if we focus on those commonalities in religion, then we're maybe 1 inch closer towards whatever that that great philosophy really is. Which probably really at the basic level is love,
I totally agree.
As it sounds, and as
I get it.
And we don't really mean it, or whatever the case may be. And it's a learning process as to what that really means, but it's a step closer in that direction once you focus in on those commonalities.
Right. Which is another way of saying you're a step closer to a good God, if there is one.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told people before, I don't believe that there's a personal God or a God that has like eyes and ears and or even senses, or just a sentient being. It's in the clouds somewhere. But if there was, and I was going to face him in judgment someday, I'm more ready now than when I was a believer, because I didn't think for myself. I didn't trust my own integrity. And I basically cowardly followed the drum beat of the group. And I think a good God would look at my new life and just say, well done, good and faithful servant. Because I pursued truth, and I pursued it relentlessly, and I didn't stop at something just because it felt comfortable, or I was strengthened by numbers or something.
And I think that what you said about like the whole idea of this God in the clouds that gonna smite you if you do something wrong and all of those kinds of things, it's like that's the philosophy that I think we're trying to break away from right now. That's that controlling philosophy that's been around for so long and in so many different ways that we're really trying to break away from. And I think that to some degree we have to own that we created that philosophy, right?
Oh, it's like such a projection of human. I mean, it just smacks of human origin.
It's hugely projected by the humans, and so it's like, okay, once you take that apart, do we now say, okay, well then what's left? What remains if you take away basically the fear? Once you take away the fear and the judgment, what remains? And I think that at the core, if we're really understanding, first, like you said, it starts with the self, right? It starts with what's within you. Because to me, one of the hugest misconceptions is that we look out, we look above, we look everywhere else besides within us. And I think the step that you were beginning to take was to not look out not look above, but to look within your own self. And they always say that, like you hear the gurus and they say that, look within your own self. But you, at the end of the day, you do find something that is more empowering than you. And you may call it God, you may call it your own self, your higher self, whatever you want to phrase it, your own intellect. That doesn't take away from what is. And so I think that by going within yourself and figuring out the questions that you have and really exploring that and not feeling wrong for exploring that, that's when you start to get closer towards something that seems a little bit more like feasible in addressing. You know, it's not so out there. Yeah. I think that spirituality, even in general, like something that I kind of try to address in my book, What the F Is Enlightenment, I try to address the fact that spirituality is always seen as some like out there experience. It's so mystical, it's this, but spirituality can be very mundane. It can be everyday. It could be a walk in nature. It could be, you know, it could be playing an instrument that you love. Like all of that mundane stuff that we don't typically think as being spiritual, to me is very spiritual.
Oh, I totally agree. That's where my path has taken me. It's a little bit booty. I say booty, like Buddhist-y.
Okay.
It's, because of disattachment from outcome. It's expectations equals suffering. And so this whole I'm looking for goosebumps and rainbows and thrills and trills. Right under our nose, the gold in our backyard. I'm a big proponent of hey man, your eyelashes are keeping dust out of your eyes. Your tear ducts are keeping your eyes moist. You're breathing in and out without any volitional, choice.
The music is right there. It's all right there.
It's every second is amazing, and I'll even use the word miraculous.
Right. And once you realize that, then you see what their true magic is. It's not being able to, obviously you'd love to have a spirit come down or an angel. Like I say that in my book too. Like I was always looking for this supernatural experience to validate what I believed in. Let me have a supernatural experience and that will validate it. But the closer you look, the more if you take a microscope over your own life and you look at the details and you kind of like, you sit back and you're amazed by the very smallest of things, you know? Mm-hmm. That's where I am now, too.
That's awesome. So, sounds like you had your own journey where you probably explored some different things. Maybe, I don't know, I've overused this, but you had your own Eat, Pray, Love experience. Did you do any globetrotting or just mostly in the library?
I did. I went to a meditation resort called Pachamama. It's in Costa Rica. Uh-huh. I would advise any of your listeners, if they're ever looking for a great spiritual experience, to check it out. It's called Pachamama, Costa Rica. I went there about 2 years ago, and it was just such a very different experience than I had ever gone to. I just wanted to do something that was like spirit oriented, something that it wasn't just a typical vacation, have fun, party, drink, whatever. It was like a spiritual experience. And I wanted to go to a place that would cater to me spiritually. And so being out in nature and being with people who are also pursuing some spiritual path and communing with them and learning about, just so many different things about yourself. I feel like it was a very transformative experience in that I was able to really connect with my inner self more through meditation. I participated in a sweat lodge, which is something that was completely new for me. I had never done it before. But going through that process of, setting an intention, it's like this dome-shaped hut, and you go in and there's a fire in the center of the hut. And it gets extremely hot. You think of the term sweat, right? Like it gets extremely hot and your body is sweating and you're begging for air, but you set this intention prior to going in, and it's just like at some point, even though you want to leave and you want to get out of it, you're really left with your spirit and you're left with that innate will to go on, and that really empowers the intention. And I left feeling very transformed, I must say. So.
Cool. Did you ever do any ayahuasca?
I haven't.
Okay, just checking.
Maybe some San Pedro. But no.
Well, I've heard good and bad stories about those sweat lodges. I mean, there's been some people that have died from irresponsible leaders, and
yeah, you definitely have to go. I mean, obviously, everybody's experience is going to be different, and for what might have been transformative for me might be horrible for someone else.
Well, and I think that's why it's valuable that you're actually referencing this particular experience. And if you would, just spell it for me again.
Pachamama, Pachamama.
Okay, and I'll put a link to that. And I guess the reason I'm saying that is because this is my problem with shade tree spirituality, or armchair spirituality, is that I started a church from scratch in Oklahoma that ended up renting a skating rink, and you know what? We're in a free country. Nobody's going to put regulations or oversee us. I mean, we like that about small government when it comes to the freedom to believe whatever you want and the freedom to gather and to congregate. And so, that's why there's thousands of cults every other day pop up in this country. And bad shit happens. And when somebody can just say, hey, I'm going to put up a tarp and I'm going to put a fire in the middle of it, and I'm going to gather some friends and we're going to experiment with sweating. I mean, it just makes me a little nervous. And I'm glad that you had a good experience. I think when you said we go into the tent with a specific intention, and mine would be to get out alive. No, but I've done a lot of things where there's kind of a pressure cooker situation, and I noticed on your blog that you fasted for 3 days with just water.
Yeah.
And we're looking for answers, and we're looking for truth under every rock. I kind of have chilled the fuck out when it comes to like the adamancy with which I used to do that. I kind of just I don't know. It's because I'm 51 and
it gets to the okay, I've had enough. I don't need to
I'm all out of fucks when it comes to finding the answers. But Pachamama, and we'll put a link to that. What about your journey has taken you down a path where, I mean, how do you identify? You probably don't like labels, but I mean, you probably wouldn't consider yourself an atheist, maybe a deist or a pantheist. What?
I don't really have a label for it, but I definitely believe in God, so I wouldn't say I'm an atheist. But I believe in searching for God within yourself and then seeing it all around you. I think that you have to go within first, and then you could look at it outside of yourself. But
well, let me ask you, how old are you now?
I am 29.
Okay, and you were in college when you started a question, and so about what age did you say I'm no longer a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian?
I would say maybe that probably took, I would say 5 years ago. So maybe around the age of 25.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
26.
All right. So
25.
Here's my prediction, Kamaria. Within 2 years, you'll be a full-blown atheist, and all this woo-woo nonsense will be in your rearview mirror.
I don't believe it.
I'm just kidding. I think my favorite theory, other than say yes to what is you do you. And I what I hear is you really want people to you're kind of a live and let live, and unless they're being a dick, unless their religion influences them to join the KKK, then it's none of our business, right?
I mean, for me, I feel like it's hard because in my book I talk about the judgment between good and bad. It's like one of the fundamental things. The first thing that pops up in the Bible, right?
Yeah. Knowledge of good and evil.
Right, the knowledge of good and evil.
Which is binary, black and white, and it's not very helpful, is it?
Right, and so it's like I have this kind of yin-yang philosophy with it now, where it's the two things are happening and one feeds off of the other in some way. Yeah. And so even though there might be things that we classify as, wrong, bad, evil, like that, it's definitely feeding into something else that's good, great, beautiful, light,
Yeah, totally.
all of things. And so once you realize that, then I'm not saying that I'm above judgment, because I definitely am not. Like, it's something that I'm still like working on, and I still definitely have some concept of good and evil and whatnot, but
just not so quick to superimpose it over everything you run into and evaluate it.
Right, and I do, and with everything that is bad, I honestly do try to find something of how it could benefit the good or create more light. And I feel like at the very basic, I think that that's what a lot of the negative things that happen is for. I feel like it does, if you allow it to, it does allow the light to shine. Because you cannot, you have to have light to create a shadow, right? You have to have darkness in order to show a light. So it's like the two are definitely working hand in hand, and it's kind of us which when I reread the Bible and I look at Adam and Eve, and I'm like, maybe it wasn't the disobedience so much, it was focusing on, now you're looking at the world in a judgmental way. You're seeing, okay, this is good and this is bad, and maybe that to me was the most the I don't know, the downfall, if you want to say that, or the fall. But it was judging things as good and bad, and not so much the disobedience piece.
Absolutely. It's amazing. This is the second time where I have a theory that I felt like was fairly unique to me. For years, I heard no one else say it. I thought maybe whatever. It was unique to me for a long time. And that is, long after I didn't believe in Adam and Eve or anything else, I still respected that story, because there's two trees. One is a tree of life, and one is a tree that results in death. And the tree of life, it doesn't give a whole lot of details about it, which is kind of cool, because let's just let it be what it is, and let it be nuanced and vague and mysterious. Whereas the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which results in death, is when you ingest that fruit and it becomes a part of your bloodstream, the DNA, the lens through which you see the world, you become a judgmental prick.
Exactly.
And you die. And I want to say to myself and whoever else is like living in that binary judgmental world, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
Because you might have a pulse, but you're dead. You're miserable.
It is. It's the duality. It's seeing, other philosophies call it duality, but it's seeing the world like that. It's, you're taking this situation, and rather than just experience it and have it give you the emotions, whatever emotions you're going to feel from it, you're going to automatically say, nope, this is wrong. I don't feel this, and this is right. I want more of this,
Sure.
And by doing that, now you disassociate yourself from that whatever wrong experience is, and you don't get what it was intended for. You don't get the true meaning of it. We ascribe meaning to everything. It's us who gives things meaning. So by disassociating yourself from whatever you judged as wrong, now you don't give it any meaning, which means it has no value to you, right?
Well, you don't get the full meaning. I think you give it your own little meaning, and it's very lopsided. And right. I think what you're saying, and I know that this is true of when you said, look, if I come up against something that I can tell, this is like the Ku Klux Klan, it's evil.
Right.
But you're also open enough to say, what about this draws these people? And let's not assume that they're monsters, that they're actually good people, and let's try to find out. Now, that's an exercise of, whatever you want. If somebody wants to do that, that's fine. I've done a little bit of it. But I guess what I'm saying is, if the Ku Klux Klan people would practice the same thing, then they wouldn't be in the Klux, they would leave.
Right.
Because instead of just already deciding, and this is what I hate about kind of what you were saying about this binary and this duality, and is that you get to a place of certainty and you're no longer asking questions. You know the truth, and end of discussion. And so when your mind's made up, it's really easy to become a bigot and not even know it. This is where blind spots come into your life, and psychological paralysis or something to where you don't even know that you don't know.
Yeah.
But your practice of saying, I'm going to actually try to find the good and, in everything. if more people would do that, the world would be a better place. But I guess what I also think we're saying, and what's inherent in this last conversation about Adam and Eve between you and I, is that as post-Christians who could easily look at the book and say, oh my God, it's full of barbaric, genocide, evil, misogyny, patriarchy. It's a bad, evil book written by stupid first century and Bronze Age shepherds, and just discard it wholeheartedly, wholesale. We go back to that Garden of Eden story, and there's some depth to that sucker in a way that you're like, whoa, that was really ahead of its time.
Big time. And I feel like I always go back to that story too. It's like one of my favorites in there to read and reread. And I don't really do that with many of the other stories, but I do it with that because to me there's just so much there. Mm-hmm. And when you start to really unpack it, more of it reveals itself to you.
So that makes me wonder if in part of your journey of experimenting and tasting different religions and cultures, did you ever look into like Judaism? Because obviously Genesis and the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and the Old Testament in general, that's the Hebrew Bible. And maybe the Christians came along, or Paul come along, and kind of tainted what was probably pretty good without it.
I have it's funny how we were talking about the Tree of Life and like Kabbalism and stuff like that. Like I've definitely gone and read up on some of that as well. Mm-hmm. In addition to other books that like the Book of Enoch, stuff like that, books that were from that time too, but not included in the Bible. I looked at those as well. So yeah, I've definitely sampled amongst Judaism and Kabbalism, mostly Kabbalism.
So your mom was the religious influence primarily. How does she know about your journey, and if so, how does she feel?
So she's not on that journey anymore.
Wait, she's not a Christian anymore?
Not necessarily, no.
More like you. She's come a little bit looser.
So I don't know if you got a chance to read the book.
I haven't. I never got a copy of it, so I'm sorry I didn't get it.
I have to figure out how to send it to you. But yes, in my book I also talk about the fact that my mom suffers from schizophrenia. Okay. And so eventually, and I talk about her religion and how eventually, I felt like she felt like the church judged her a lot prior to getting getting mentally ill or whatever. Like, just the judgment from the church was really overbearing for her. And I feel like even the purpose of me writing was a lot related to that as well, as far as figuring out how to move beyond that judgment piece, what she experienced. And although she does maintain some spiritual aspect of her, it's clouded to some degree by the schizophrenia as well.
Yeah. One of the most toxic aspects of Christianity is the view of what it means to be human, that you're broken, flawed, you're beyond repair, you deserve eternal torture. You're hopelessly sinful and evil and selfish, and there's no good in you. It's a pretty bleak look at the human condition. And then secondly, kind of compounded on top of that, that's already bad enough. But if and when you manifest some mental illness or even a physical illness because of this, some of the mindsets within Christianity is that those are manifestations of a lack of faith, or you're not as spiritual, or God's kind of judging you, God's disciplining you.
Punishment. It's punishment for not following, because there was a time when I was thinking of it in those terms, like my mom is being punished by God because she didn't follow the tenets of the religion. And so it's like, imagine how disempowering and how devastating that could be.
Absolutely. I mean, your mom's already feeling bad enough and weird enough and strange enough and estranged from her community and herself. Like, what is happening to me, and why am I feeling and thinking these thoughts? And then for a group of people to come and wag their finger at her.
Right, exactly. It can be very disheartening, and I think that to me was one of the causes as well, as to me to look deeper into what I believed as well.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear your mom is kind of loosened up on maybe getting out of at least the toxic perspective or version of Christianity and hold on to a little bit.
Yes. I think that she would have liked to stay in to get more of like there's always fellowship and communion with other people is very important. I think
huge.
That social aspect of being a part of something is important. So I think that part was maybe lost, but yes, I feel like the whole judgment piece of feeling like you're not good enough constantly, I think that part is the part that she doesn't have to worry about so much anymore, and neither do I.
What about you? Do you have any siblings?
I do have siblings.
How do they feel about your journey? Are they Christian? Are they similar journey?
No, there's a huge gap in age between myself and my siblings, so they were around my mom more when she was out of the church, so they don't have that much of a memory of going through.
Okay, you're the firstborn?
I'm the secondborn.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine Boston is, I think of, down here in the South, I was raised in Oklahoma and I've been in Tennessee for a long time, and both of these states, we call it the Bible Belt, we call it Christian hegemony. It's in your face, and everybody wants to know where you go to church, and everybody thinks and sees the world through the lens of Christianity. So there's a lot of pressure down here, not only to conform to it, but for it to just shape the way everything goes down here. Whereas maybe in Boston, not so much.
Yeah, I don't think that. It's culturally very diverse, and so people have their different, opinions of what they believe, and even though it's depending on your culture, yes, it can be a part, but it's not so in your face. Like you're not seeing a Bible scripture on a billboard as you're driving by, or like it's not like when you meet somebody first, they want to know what church you're going to or where you attend. It's definitely not in your face like that. I think people are a lot more open-minded, liberal and whatnot. So they definitely explore things a lot more than other regions of the U.S. does. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just before we wrap up, the book is called What the Fuck is Enlightenment, or What the F is Enlightenment. And I also want to mention that people can reach you at wtfenlightenment@gmail.com.
Absolutely. So I can be reached on social media. I'm on Instagram at WTF is Enlightenment, and I'm also on Facebook, on my Facebook page at WTF is Enlightenment. So definitely check those out. Cool.
What do you do for fun? I was thinking about Boston Marathon. Are you a runner?
No. For fun, it's just the occasional going out for a drink or for food with friends. I always love doing that. Also, the occasional barbecue, like my friends like to throw a little barbecue here or there. I'm always down for that. I'm not so much of a partier as much as I used to be. I could still be, but I definitely have wound down over the years. So
what do you do for a living?
Actually, I am a teacher.
What age?
So I teach elementary, 4th grade.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah, so I also love that. I love being around children. I love their creativity and, always learning something new. Every day is different, right, with teaching and with kids. So I'm gearing up for that right now. September is around the way, so we're about to head right back into the classrooms very soon.
Well, my wife is a teacher, and they started last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, some schools have started here. It's more of the charter schools have started. Boston public schools don't usually start up until about the first week of September.
So you don't attend church anywhere?
Occasionally, I do go to a Baptist church, but it's definitely not something that I do on a regular basis. Yeah. I honestly probably haven't been there in months. But I do occasionally because I haven't completely lost my faith. And like I said, I think of it more as an expanded faith that I have now. And so when I do go, I take what's for me and leave the rest behind.
So what's the answer to your question? What the fuck is enlightenment? What is enlightenment to you?
Enlightenment to me is remembering who you are at your core.
There you go.
And that's how I define it in the book. But as you will see, by the time you get to the end of the book, it's really an open question still, because it depends on how you want to define it. And so I leave it open-ended for the person reading, the reader, to explore what it means to them on a personal level. But for me personally, it means just remembering who you are at your core in every moment.
Yeah. Well, I know you got to run. The room that you're using is now being taken over. So, Kamaria, thanks for coming on, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed speaking with you so much, and it's been a great experience, and it's really given me some things to think about. So, thank you.
Awesome. Have a good weekend.
You do the same.
Kamaria Powell.
Yes, Kamaria. Very interesting.
Well, when I think when we first read the title with what the fuck is enlightenment,
right?
Kind of thought there was going to be like a really edgy person on the other end of that book.
And I thought you'd talk about the Enlightenment, the 17th century Enlightenment, but that's not it. That's it's more her personal enlightenment.
Yeah, it's talking about the spiritual enlightenment, like what Buddhists are pursuing, as far as Zen or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she seemed to be, one thing I got, which is from listening, is what a patient person.
Yeah.
In fact, I was thinking that so many people of color, African American and others, are, because they live in this culture and have lived in this culture for so long, you just have to
chill the fuck out.
Well, what are you going to do? You want it right now. I understand that.
That came out.
Yeah, and that's why, Martin Luther King was, that's why Malcolm X was such a big deal. Because he wanted it right now. The Black Panthers wanted it right now, right?
Right.
But Martin Luther King was the sort of the governor, the mediating force.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
to rein it in.
Hold on, everybody. That kind of stuff. And because that's the way white folks wanted it. To tell you the truth, that's why President Johnson wanted it. He
wanted what?
He just wanted it to be slow, very slow. It should be, And after a couple 100 years, the time's up, man. What's the problem here? Let's go. I mean, it's just so good. Like the LGBT movement, we've seen huge strides, I mean, it feels like it happened like that, but it took 30 years for it to happen like that.
Yeah, but we're talking 200 years for the black community.
So
200 or 300.
So, I look at this and I think, I don't know if I could be patient. But then again, if I was a person of color, not being patient, I'd get hit on the head.
Yeah.
I'd be stopped in my car constantly saying, do you own that, sir?
The contrast with MLK and Malcolm X is alive and well today.
Yeah.
In the Antifas. Do you know that?
Yeah.
That group?
Yeah.
So it's just a huge debate out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Michael Shermer tweeted today.
Yeah.
He said, who's better, KKK or Antifas, or who's worse?
Yeah.
And then he said, wrong question.
Right.
The question is, does violence ever really change culture? Now, what he doesn't, I can't say what he realizes or what he doesn't. He's a brilliant man.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about the first anti-FOS group of the United States or of America, was the people that resorted to violence.
Yeah,
to establish. I'm talking about the Revolutionary War. Abolitionists.
Yeah. I mean, all those people they're pretty tough.
I can't get in this debate because I feel so disqualified because I'm obviously, I think nobody's pro-violence.
No.
However, I'm just saying that there's some there's some shit that we'd be speaking German today if we were fully pacifists.
Yeah, that's right. But
Normandy was violent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy.
I mean, it's just the beach was covered with blood.
Well, and that's the thing. When you see, when you see, I don't know, Nazi guys white supremacists walking around armed, saying,
blood and soil.
Blood and soil, blood and soil. I mean, the response to that is, how do you respond to that?
Yeah.
I mean, you can turn around and run away, I suppose, but the only response to that is resistance. You can't, you must resist that kind of thinking.
And Antifas is resisting, and they're willing to be violent. So they're a little bit more of the Malcolm
X than Martin Luther King. Yeah, you're right.
Whereas Black Lives Matter might be a little bit more Martin Luther King. But what we're talking about, what started this was the patience of Kamaria. She's
that's right.
Just saying, hey, it's, somehow she's learned that it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. But how long is it going to take, for Christ's sake?
I think what we're both saying, from as much as we can from a place of white male privilege, is, oh my gosh, imagine the amount of patience that it would take for. I mean, sometimes here on the show, we're talking to people that got 1 foot in of Christianity, 1 foot out, or we're talking about kind of lukewarm, wishy-washy agnosticism, and we're kind of like trying to be nice, play well with others and stuff. Yeah. And a lot of times you go, nope, God would have showed up by now if he existed.
Well, I think he's had enough time.
He's had enough time.
We've tried that.
And so what you're displaying in that moment is, nope, my patience is over. As far as like, why are we still talking about whether there's a God or not? We know there's not one because he would have showed up by now. In fact, every time anything like this pops up in the news, and it's just any amount of suffering.
I know.
There was this woman she spent 29 days tied up and as a sex slave. She was abducted by these 3 guys. She escaped this week. They left. She got out of her handcuffs or, like plastic ties and stuff.
Yeah, right.
She ended up swimming across a lake to get to a house on the other side and knocked on the door and stuff, and it got her freedom or whatever.
Wow.
But in those 29 days, and Hitch used this as an example.
Yeah.
In those 29 days, maybe she's praying. She's getting ramrodded by 3 guys. And, maybe she's praying.
Yeah.
And day 2, day 3, day 4, and I think what what anybody who appeals to the problem of evil as a substantial argument for atheism is, what kind of sadist? If you've got the power, you're omnipotent, motherfucker.
Yeah, right.
What kind of sadist sits back and watches day 1, day 2, day 3? And we're just talking about one girl in a 30-day or 29-day abduction.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's 1 out of a million as we speak right now that's in sex slavery.
Yeah.
And praying. In fact, there's another thing that a guy posted this week about this couple back in the 80s. There was this infatuation with satanic rituals, and there was this couple, and she was 40, he was 50, and they started a daycare out of their home. They had petting zoo. They were just really sweet people, and one person made an accusation that they had abused the child, and then all these people piled on, and then the imagination just went nuts, and then they were ritualistically abusing and sacrificing babies, and it was just crazy. And it completely snowballed, and the judicial system at the time, they put them in jail for 50 years. Now, they served 20, and they just got out.
My gosh.
And they didn't do a goddamn thing. Not 1 ounce of it was true. And the state has paid them now $3.4 million. But my point is, and you know what they did? I didn't hear it much from the woman, but when the man came out, guess who he thanked? God. And I wanted to say, like Job's wife, curse God. That motherfucker did nothing for you. And when they were in there, guess what? They're in there for not only pedophilia or like just killing babies. They had to watch over their shoulders every day for 20 plus years. Their life was cursed. There is no God. There is no God. Because if there is, he's a sadist. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And the same thing happens when I watch Hurricane Irma.
Exactly.
When I watch, the Houston problems and stuff, these people going, thank God. Well, wouldn't it have been better to not have the hurricane at all?
Yeah.
That would be better.
Right.
And if you've got power over the earth, I mean, come on.
Right.
It's just, and it's always thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. You just want to slap somebody.
And your patience is running thin. And that's what I'm saying, is that it's one way that I relate to, like, how long are we going to continue to do
Fix
this?
fucking global warming. There you go.
There you go.
Now you won't have too many problems if you did that,
But for people like Kamaria, whose fathers and grandfathers and great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers and fathers were probably slaves.
Yeah, right.
That they every day wake up in a world run by whites, ignorant whites.
Oh, yeah.
Have no idea the pain and suffering that they have imposed on this whole demographic. And yet people like Kamaria get out of bed, go to work, live their life in an ignorant, like you talk about hegemony. We talk about Christian hegemony on this show, but this is white hegemony.
Yeah.
And it's ignorant. And you're waiting for the whites to get it. You're waiting for the whites to have some empathy.
You could live your whole life.
Well, that's kind of what she's saying, and I think I wasn't gonna go here, but I'm glad you did. Just pointing out the patience.
Yeah,
that was in her voice, in her tone, and goddamn, what kind of strength and character and integrity does it take to be that good a person in view and in light of not only her lifetime, but all the lifetimes that have gone on before for the last 200 or 300 years. In the black culture.
Exactly. And because of that, you can see why God and certainly, Southern, well, I don't know if it's
Pentecostal.
Pentecostal.
Yeah.
God and religion played a big part in, where was the succor? Where was the release? Where was the love, at the church? Where are you going to go? You're not going to find it outside the church,
It's totally ironic, though, because a lot of slavery was justified by the scriptures. The South defended their right to have
sons
slaves.
of Ham,
by using
the sons of Shem, and all that stuff. And what bullshit that is, too. Come on.
Yeah.
Right there in the Bible, he could have done something about it.
Yeah.
That would have been a good little shot.
Okay, so talking about these storms, as people are posting, and with all the back-to-back Harvey and Irma.
You're right.
And, I forget what else, but just, the Bible talks about there will be earthquakes, about the apocalypse, about the coming of the end of times.
Right.
There will be storms, and there will be this or that.
And there will be Jim Baker.
Oh my God! Don't bring up Jim Baker.
And there'll be those guys saying, "Here it comes." Here, they're saying storms and the gays.
But here's the thing: they use this phrase, "God's trying to get our attention," and what they don't realize is that He could send us a text. He could part the heavens and say, Bob and Cass. He could just say America. He could say, "I'd like for you to repent of whatever it is He wants." And so this whole trying to get our attention, really, that's as good as you get to kill people, to send storms, to ruin people's lives. That's the method that you've chosen to get our fucking attention. Fuck you. He's
hot. He's getting hot, folks.
He's a sadist as he watched this girl get raped for 29 days. He loves evil. He loves pain and suffering.
And what would a Christian say to that? No, he doesn't.
Okay, I have to get back in the Christian head.
It's Satan, right? Then why doesn't he fucking smash Satan? For Christ's sake, he's God.
Well,
you know what I mean?
The next thing is free will. In the case of those three guys that abducted her, He's not going to intervene in humans' free will. And so it's not God's fault that those three guys raped her for 29 days.
Yeah, well, but he also says he's omnipotent and knows every hair on your head. Yeah. And when a sparrow falls...
He even says that he causes the evil and the good. There's a scripture that it just literally ascribes to him.
And I know I think the Marcionites are... I don't know if that's right, but one of those sects back in the early Christianity believed there was... God was both good and bad, you know. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, is you can't have that. You got to have the bad guy.
No, I would say that Christians, they have to because they canonize scripture. Now, we know that was written by a dumbass that just wanted to... He was just pulling stuff out of his ass, and he said God does the evil and the good. Yeah. I mean, right? That's what we know, that nobody knows God. Nobody can write on behalf of God. So anytime somebody opens their mouth to...
Well, I'm just a vessel. You know?
Yeah.
I'm a vessel.
But we know
God
that's bullshit.
uses me to write the bullshit that I'm writing.
Yeah. So I want this land. I want the Canaanites out. I'm going to borrow God's name to justify the genocide of a whole group of people or whatever. You know, it's just, we see it for what it is. We do. But the people that canonize it can't. And so they do have to embrace that they have a dualistic God.
I just saw a PRI, or maybe it's PBS, I can't remember, something like that.
Yeah, some public radio.
Some public radio or public television thing about new statistics that just came out on how religion is changing in the country, and how white people are now about 43% Christian. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They've just gone below the 50.
Right.
Yeah.
Dropped before the 50% mark. So there are more and more Muslims, there are more and more other religions, and more atheists and agnostics now, too.
Yeah, I saw that same post. In fact, I even posted something like, so the war on Christmas was real. I mean, like, we've laughed at them for thinking that they're afraid that they're losing power. And we've like, you guys are the most powerful hegemonic force juggernaut that's running this country.
Yeah, right.
And so we laugh at their fear of diminishment, but it's actually happening. So their fears were justified.
And they're doing it to themselves. That's what I think.
Oh,
I think just
especially with the Nashville statement.
Yeah, with the Nashville statement, there's a good one.
Was there some pushback to that, or what?
Yes, there was.
I mean, it caused a rift within Christianity.
Yeah, good.
Of course.
Yeah, it should. But the way people treat gays, the way people treat, bully people with disabilities sometimes, because, if you got a disability, well, God doesn't like you too much, and, that kind of stuff. I mean, that
goes all the way back to the New Testament.
Yeah.
Who sinned? What they asked Jesus, there was this guy that was crippled, and they went to him and they said, who sinned, him or his parents? They're trying to where did he get this crippledness? Because it's old.
It's just insane.
Old thinking.
So that type of stuff, people are going, no. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to hurt that person. No. Why? How dare you?
Or blame them for being handicapped, or ascribe to them it's a lack of faith,
because you're gay, or because you're whatever you are.
Oh, right.
Be just be a person and be all fucked up like the most of us, and be loving and kind. And what's the problem? But
you're inviting them to join the human race, which is
please.
That comes up almost every week for me.
Yeah.
I see people, even people in my own life, that still have like this perfection standard in their own life. Can we just say right now, loud and clear, there is no such thing as perfection anywhere in this cosmos.
Yeah, certainly not. Well, not in nature. That's for sure. There's no perfection.
There is no such thing as perfection.
There's certainly no perfection in the human body. There's a lot of stuff that we could redesign on the human body to make it a little bit easier.
Well, and our desire for there to be such a thing is very strong. So we give the gymnast a 10, and we call that was perfect. Bullshit.
Okay. Within a very small range.
We might get close.
Yeah. With a very small range, meaning that you have to hit all these marks in a very specific way. If you've done that, okay, perfect. But even that's questionable. Who decides what perfect is, So,
well, and it's just driven by our need to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think we hate ourselves so bad, and thus we hate each other. And I just think there's such a stinking, childish, immature, insecure drive in every human being, to varying degrees, obviously. Yeah. But in the worst case scenario, it's just, don't lump me together with that. I'm superior to that. And that's where racism comes. It's where misogyny comes. It's where xenophobia comes. It's just, please don't lump me in with that. I mean, and it's, obviously, it has giant holes in it from a logical standpoint, but fearful people aren't logical. They're panicking.
No, that's true. Well, I think when you're afraid, you become insane.
You do.
You do. Yeah.
I mean, because think about blood and soil. We talked about this on the porch. I don't really understand that statement. But
just sanguine. If you're born solely, meaning soil, if you were born on the soil, then
you belong here.
You belong.
And if you didn't, you don't.
Yeah, just solely, just sanguine. And sanguine means blood. So the blood
is Latin.
Yeah. So the notion that, you have the blood of the American in you. What?
Now, was that
what is that about?
That chant, was that originally Nazi?
I don't know.
Or where's
That's
that go
a good
back
question.
to?
That's a good question. But the notion that the Nazis, not the Germans so much, but the Nazis were very much, of course, they were all about the Ubermensch, the Superman.
Well, here's what I mean by holes. What the fuck are we doing here? We're Anglo.
Yeah.
So we're not of this soil either. We're not of this blood. Now,
it was actually people that believed if you had one drop of blood from, slave blood, black blood, or whatever, well, you're tainted. You're not really one of us.
Yeah.
But all of us come from the African continent. We all have a little black blood in us, or whatever the hell that means.
Just human. Just join the human race.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that need to elevate ourselves at each other's expense.
Yeah.
But this DACA thing.
Oh,
that's
yes.
very relevant right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And these people are coming out of the woodwork. They weren't born here.
Right.
They're illegals.
Well, usually they were brought when they're tiny children, sometimes babies.
Yeah.
And so all they know is the United States of America, and all they know is this country, and they've grown up, and they've got educated, and they went to school, and some are nurses and doctors and all sorts of things now. And they're going to get
serving in the military.
Yeah, serving in the, and they're going to get shipped back.
They're going to get shipped back.
I doubt that. I hope not. I hope Congress, in its quote wisdom, figures this out. This is absolutely wrong, and it's going to cost us a shitload of money. Did you see how much money?
It was like $6 billion or something.
Yeah, I even saw higher than that. It's going to hurt the economy. So if that's the only thing they think of, it's going to hurt our economy. Okay. But it's more, a moral and humane issue.
Did you see this thing today that Trump is the first white president?
Yeah, I did see that. I read that in The Atlantic.
Everything that he's doing is just to elevate white males.
Well, this is it, man. The last gasp. They're 70, they're 80 years old. They're, come on, I own everything,
Well,
and they're just holding on, So, and I'm one of them. Of course, I'm not really.
But you're not afraid, and that's a big difference. These motherfuckers are afraid.
Let everybody come. Come on, everybody gets to play. Let's go. That's what I think. That's just me.
Well, yeah, let them. This is the opposite of yes saying. Because it is happening. The tide is turning. The gene pool is changing. America's changing, or whatever.
Yeah, we're changing again, and we'll change again after that. Too,
and that's the Christian hegemony dropped below the 50% mark.
Yeah,
so that's changing.
That's big.
And you can fold your arms and stick your lower lip out and go no, and you can push back and you can fight it. But you're fighting reality. You might as well be fighting Irma.
Yeah, right.
Standing there in a storm and pointing at Irma. This shit is coming, and you can either figure out how to abide and get along.
That's right,
and say yes to what is, or you can throw your tantrum.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
They're scared shitless.
Yeah,
They're cowards. It's just cowardly, and it's not very attractive, and it's not a very attractive America right now.
No, that's very true. And you would think too that Trump or the Republicans, or those who control everything now, I guess the Republicans would say, "My gosh, the people of color, the people of Honduras, people of Mexico, all these all these new people that are arriving, Hispanics and what have you."
Yeah.
They're the fastest growing political force in the nation. They're really growing fast, and you would think we got to have those guys on our side. We got to have them vote for us. Why would you do this, Doc? Why wouldn't you do the Dreamer Act? Because it's going to. You know what I mean?
They have two options, Bob, and I think
politically it's a good idea.
They can cooperate and try to get their votes.
Yeah.
Or they can ship them out or genocide them.
Oh, jeez.
Which is what the Nazis were marching for. It's literally a race war.
I hope if anybody tries that, I hope the
Antifas.
Well,
whoever.
I would like to think that legal entities, our legal system and our police system, military, whoever, would come down hard on those people, because you can't do that to people. You just can't.
No.
Period. And if you're going to try that, you're going to jail.
It's almost like you're going to look them in the eye and say, "These are Americans you're about to kill."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as if that would be an epiphany to them, because they've no blood and soil, right?
Sure.
No, they're not. They're brown.
That's right.
They're not.
What do they think they are? Well, remember the way people treated the Japanese in the Second World War too.
Yeah.
They turned them in. They would paint pictures of them to look like rats.
Well, the Jews too.
And the Jews. Oh yeah. So all those things, you dehumanize them, you turn them into vermin, and then you kill them.
Well, and what I would like to do in the spirit of Ernest Becker is to acknowledge that we're all vermin. That we're just animals. In fact, we're potatoes. We're
with IQs.
With IQs. So the sooner
Thank you, Mr. Potato Head.
Well, it's not only honest. It's embracing the truth, but it's embracing humility. I mean, in some ways, virtue comes easy once you get honest. Mm-hmm. And actually, you'll find yourself being a nice person by just embracing what is. And it's this fight, this pushback, this scaredy cat, cowardly pussy activity. And it's so funny. And it's not funny. It'd be funny if it wasn't.
Well, it's darkly
so
funny.
Sad.
It's ironic, yeah.
But the machoism, the guns, the muscle shirts or whatever, I don't know. Just this whole supremacy thing. And yet they're the biggest pussies on the planet.
I saw that guy in Charlottesville that was crying and stuff after he got picked up and what have you.
Well, actually, I would call that macho, in a sense.
The crying stuff.
Well, if he's like,
I don't know if he was sorry for it.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't either. I don't know what was going on.
But I think it was like, oh my God, you found me out. Now I'm very sad. Because you caught me. But
I was afraid to go to jail. Maybe I think that's what that was. I don't know. But if somebody would have some remorse.
Yeah, I don't know if he's remorseful about his activity, but
that activity, if it involves tears or not, repentance, remorse, oh my God, I can't believe I was such a dick, that's macho.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It takes a man to go, oh my God, I made a giant mistake.
Yeah.
I have been believing a lie. I've been acting from fear. And, I posted something about DACA today, and somebody jumped on and said something about, well, why don't they do, it was just a counter to it.
Yeah.
And I just said, what are you afraid of? I mean, I didn't in those exact words, but I just said, it's so sad that we've become a very fearful and cowardly country, and it's not.
Well,
not
it's
very
that,
pretty.
you know what it is? It's the zero-sum game notion.
Oh, yeah.
It's the fear that, if they get it, I lose it.
Yeah.
It's like love, man. The more you give it away, the more you have, man. Yeah, man. But that's man.
That's what privilege looks like. When when you're losing your privilege, you're losing your power that you've actually been wielding artificially.
How are they losing their power? I just don't understand it. Do they feel like I don't have my SUV anymore? No, you still do. You still have your big house. You still have your billions in investment. You're fine. What's the problem?
For these people, Bob, they don't even want to share the interstate with brown people. They don't want to look to their right or their left. They want to look to their right or their left and see themselves. They want to see their people. And they want to be a part of the winning team because at the end of the day, going back to Ernest Becker, they're afraid of their own meaninglessness, and that's why I'm saying let's embrace our ratness. We're already rats. We're already just animals with prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
And the sooner we get honest about that there's no honesty takes courage. That's all.
Yeah, that's true, man. Interesting though. I mean, just on that one little idea, you could see, and how important that Kamaria. How grateful I am that she is who she is, because it made me think about that. And I think that's important. People should think about that, when you look at her, you look at me, you look at you. You know?
And I think we're also acknowledging that in order for her to be the woman of the character and integrity that she is, it probably took a little harder work than somebody who just has lives in a culture that already privileges their existence.
Very true.
And for her to not have a chip on her shoulder, she didn't even have a chip on her shoulder to her former religion. Mm-hmm. And she was kind of woo-woo. I mean, she's got one foot in spirituality, but at least she's smorgasbording.
Yeah, right.
She's completely cherry-picking from religions, whatever she wants.
And that was interesting because you did mention, you did say
in 2 years you'll be
in a couple of years you'll be atheist. She didn't want to go there though.
But I'll tell you what I do honor about her faith is that it is about going within. Mm-hmm. I mean, when she embraced what in some ways all religions, even Christianity alludes to this, that the kingdom of God is within you. Those kind of references.
That's Luke. Yeah.
And if you
How the hell did that get in the Bible? The kingdom of God is within you.
Oh, the Bible's schizophrenic. There's some great shit in there, and there's some horrible shit in there. And it's written by a bunch of different people, so surprise.
Surprise.
It's schizophrenic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's written by assholes and occasionally some pretty enlightened people.
But I think that's true. Go inside.
What the fuck is enlightenment, though, Bob?
I can tell you about the 17th century Enlightenment, but I don't know.
And I think it matters that we're talking about her patience and her chilledness, and I think she's kind of, that ended up applying to her faith. She's like, chill out. You don't have to pray. You don't have to fast. You don't have to do this or that. And yet, she does. She does pray. She does fast. She does go to sweat lodges. She does go within. She does. She's on a search for meaning, and there's no way that none of us are. We already know that that's our instinct to be meaning-making creatures. That comes with the prefrontal cortex. So let's not kid ourselves. We're all meaning-making, and I can stand in judgment that I'm doing meaning-making better than her. And I am doing meaning-maker better than a lot of people, but I respect her honesty. And she's like, yeah, right now I'm just trying out things, and where I find a truth, I grab it, I put it in my knapsack, and I keep walking.
Right. Sounds like a Unitarian.
Yeah.
Syncretic. You take it from music, you take it from poetry, you take it from great literature.
Don't get me started on art, man.
Yeah, art. Sure.
I think art is the language of God, if you will. I mean, if there is something that is expressing what it really means to be human, because this is where we're not rats. Rats don't make art.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of what makes us a little bit unique.
Yeah.
And it is what best expresses and yet doesn't define that which we are musing over.
Yeah.
And so it just leaves it out there. It puts it out there. It came from a deep place within me. You can judge it, but I don't give a fuck because it was a vomit of my soul. And I just think art is.
You have to clean it up too.
No, you don't. No, you don't. It's the best way to touch the divine, if there is such a thing. And the divine is us. Yeah. And there is no external. There is no God out there.
Very humanist, yes.
And yet, there is something very magical about being alive. And I will never shame someone for wanting to tap into that. And that's what I got out of Kamaria.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my talk with her.
Yeah, she's, wow. She was something. She hung. I like it when we have guests that just... you can hang in there with you.
Well, you can tell in the cadence of the conversation. Even as a listener, you might actually hear something to where you think, okay, that's going to lose her or that's going to lose him. And yet, both of us we picked right up off of what the other person just said, made us think of something. And God damn it, it's a silly thing, but I used to play this thing, and I hate to admit that this was not elementary school, this was college. But we used to set up like a clothesline or something in our dorm room, and we'd play balloon volleyball. So we'd get a regular balloon, not a helium balloon, just a regular oxygen balloon, and we'd tap it over the net, and if it touched any surface, if it touched the bed, if it touched the floor, then that was a point. And we're just keeping it going. And I love conversations, and I love minds and souls, if you will, that when Kamaria brings herself, her soul. Yeah. The balloon is the conversation.
Right.
But when she brings it, and she and I are volleying this balloon, and it never touches the ground until we're like, hey, thanks for calling. It was good to do, and then we let it rest.
Yeah.
But I just love that. And that's real. Like that's happening in real time. Nothing scripted about this show. Nothing.
That's for sure. Huh?
Right. And that's true of any conversation at any coffee shop.
Yeah.
Is you're creating art because you don't know when you sit down at that table at the coffee shop where this is going to go. And that's exciting.
Yes.
That's meaning making for me because I'm bored. Right? I'm bored. And I mean, as far as life can get really banal, and she said that you can find divinity or spirituality in the most mundane things if you'll have your eyes open.
Right. Thomas Merton.
And meeting a stranger, meeting someone different than you, going to a different culture. I love the way she used the word culture because she's not only visiting other religions, she's realizing, my God, we're a complex species.
Yeah.
And to just pigeonhole yourself into one little religion and say, I'm right. Everybody else is wrong. That is so fucking narrow, and it's cowardly and scared. It's coming from that same place.
Yeah.
Say yes to what is. Open your eyes to like the complexity of things, and then just to the best of your ability, try to wrap your heart and mind around it, but you're not going to. So don't beat yourself up if you don't, and don't fear judgment at the end of life that you're going to burn because you didn't wrap your head and mind around it enough. God damn it. We're so cruel to ourselves.
Yes, we are. Yes.
As a species, as individuals, we've talked about this on the porch, that the bully within.
Oh, boy.
That we're our worst critics. I mean, we're,
and that's the hardest thing, to give yourself a hug. I don't know if you can
cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
Take yourself way less serious.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it gets better when you get older, I could tell you.
You do.
That much.
You chill and you pick your fucks better.
Yeah. I yes, stuff that used to really piss me off. I'm more whatever.
Yeah, whatever. And that
good luck to you.
Right. Good luck with that.
Exactly.
You'll learn to chill out, and you'll learn to pick your battles better. And that's why I love. And I'm not saying this as I know this term is so derogatory or whatever, but older people. It's just the wisdom, the chill. And I'm inching my way towards that. I can feel it. I'm only 51, but I can feel myself chilling out.
Yeah, you really do get that sense that I don't really give a shit kind of what you think anymore or whatever.
Or I'm not responsible for saving the world.
You're right.
I mean,
good luck. What can I say? You look at it and go, oh, that's not going to work out for this guy. I can see it.
All right.
And then but I can't tell you what to do because nobody could tell me what to do when I was 21, right? Yeah. I knew everything, of course. When you're a college freshman, why do you go to college? You know everything anyway. So.
I think where this gets put to the test is when we've created something and we we show up at a cocktail party and somebody doesn't like us, and if you're a confident person, you can say, well, that's on them. I can't control how they feel. I'm a nice guy. I'm going to be me.
Yeah.
And you walk out of there with just as much confidence as you walked in because you don't give a fuck. Right?
Well, because if they don't like you, it's not your fault. It's on them.
Exactly. I know that term sounds like apathy, but it's actually just maturity in this context. But where that gets challenging, and I'm gonna call you out on this.
Okay.
Is that you're a screenwriter.
Yeah.
You've got a movie that you made a 30-minute version of years ago.
Yeah.
It's been pitched. It's been, there's some people showing some interest. They want to make a full feature, hour-and-a-half movie out of it.
Yeah.
You've had to rewrite the script several times.
Yeah.
You just pitched it. They just pitched it to 3 different companies.
Well, they call it coverage, where three different people read it.
Yeah. And then all 3 of them passed on it.
They said, no, it's not. No. Don't do it.
And so you've got to go back to the drawing board. You don't have to, but if you...
I mean, I could go, no, it's mine. It's my script, and it's beautiful. It's Shakespeare, and I'm not going to... And you can be right and never get a movie made.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me see what I can do. And son of a gun, when I start rewriting, I think of other things, and they're better. And you start drilling down, and you come up with better stuff. So I don't mind.
A little bit of a pressure cooker.
A little bit, yeah.
It says take it back to the drawing board and maybe dig deeper.
Yeah, but it's not because of me. Well, maybe it is because of me. Anyway,
it's not. It's not an indictment or whatever against something that you're lacking. But
I do think that when I first read it, I thought, oh man, what am I like? Who do I think I am that I can write?
Well, there's that.
I can't write.
There's the bully.
Yeah, but then eventually you go, shut up, and then you
and you do kind of have to talk yourself into like, no, I have something valid to say.
Yeah, I've got something here,
and maybe I do have to dig a little deeper. But you don't beat yourself up over it.
Too much. No, not as much as I used to.
Yeah, that's again what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think so. You think, well, I know I can do this. I've done this dozens of times. I can do this. So
you just said that like I could like fold my arms and throw my tantrum and I wouldn't have a movie. I mean, like they're not going to buy it or whatever.
Right, and that's not a good way to behave.
It's not. Unless you're a child. But I also want to give all of us, because kind of what I'm saying as far as also saying yes to what is very nuanced. I mean, I think I opened the show with a thing about that, but. There are some battles that you're going to have to pick along the way as far as the point at which you will compromise what it means to be you in order to succeed in this case. Or like get.
Yeah, but I think there's also a point, though, where you go, Look,
I
this
brought my best.
Yeah, this isn't a movie about a tap dancing donkey. If that's what you want, I can't write that. That's not what I'm doing.
That's what I'm saying. Is
you know what I mean?
The nuance is you find the place where you like, okay, when you got those 3 rejections, you had the choice. And you can say, okay, are those 3 people full of shit and I'm right or whatever? Or am I full of shit and they're right? Somewhere in between, and you have to decide, all right, I will rewrite it one more time. But that might be my threshold. That might be where I say, I brought my A game and you've given it an F. And I just know that in this context, I mean, not in this context, but in a broad context, in life, part of embracing what it means to be Cass or what it means to be you, everybody embracing themselves and saying, you know what, I'm gonna show up as me, and I'm gonna hope that not you like me, but that somebody likes me, because I don't want to be alone. I don't want to have a non-movie. I want, or whatever. That's right. I don't want to be alone. And I know that people would say, well, you double down on your pride, they would say, or your need to be right. And that gets challenged. And I do, but there's somewhere in there where you have to decide how much you're going to let that person's voice into your head. In that, do they have a point and I need to change?
Right.
Or I'm being gaslighted here into thinking that I'm something that I'm not.
Right.
And I'm going to have to gird up my own legs, my own dignity, and pride. And I'm going to have to say, no, thank you. I'm not going to change for you. Well, and in that case, there's a casualty. That relationship is going to be. I mean,
I might do I'll go back and rewrite and do the best I can, and really hit all the marks they expect me to hit.
Yeah.
And then if they still don't like it, I'm stumped. I don't know what more to do.
Yeah.
So I might have to just give it up and say, look, you need a script doctor or something. You fix it. I don't know what to do with it. I think I've done everything, I can.
Right.
And that takes, that you have to swallow some pride for that too.
Yes. And it's painful. It could be depressing. Yeah. But part of what we have to think about also, when we get to that place of depression, it largely is caused by what we deem as a lack of options. So it's, in this case, it would be, I've written it as many times as I can, and I kind of like it. And so what do I do now? And you think it's either this movie or it's not. Yeah. Well, obviously another option is you get your pen out and a blank piece of paper and you start writing a brand new one.
Right.
Or as far as just letting yourself, I just know that it's a cognitive tool to get yourself out of depression, is to help yourself see more than just these 2 options, which is bad and even worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Think creatively outside the box. Oh, I could scrap this whole narrative and start over with, some of the other ideas you have or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm obviously not talking to you right now.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the listeners that are like maybe they've got their back against the wall and they're not seeing very many options.
Well, you have to
get creative.
Get creative and have a sense of humor about it too.
Oh yeah.
After a while, it's like, okay,
this is not a hill to die on.
This is really. Yeah. Because things are good. For the most part, things are pretty good.
But what the fuck is enlightenment?
What is enlightenment? I think we should have another show next week.
I never got her to say the F word. She just kept saying F.
What the fuck is enlightenment? That's the name of the book. And she, no matter how much you said fuck, she wasn't going to go there. She wasn't going there.
So let me mention this. I know we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
But I got an email this week, or I got a message this week from a listener of the show who said, why do you guys have to cuss so much? And he... I know he was an older gentleman. It's old school.
Yeah.
And he equates it with low character.
Oh, sure. Because the immigrant would swear. The low class would swear.
And I know that's his paradigm.
Yeah, of course.
It's not mine at all. Like, my heroes cuss like sailors. Colbert and Stewart and John Oliver. I mean, like the comedians in my life, Mark Maron. Mark Maron's show is called What the Fuck. And he opens it with, what the fuckers, what the fucknicks, what the fuckadelics. I mean, it is a meaningless word to me. It's actually a powerful word, but but so is benevolent, if I want to use that in a sentence or whatever. I mean, it's just a word, and I don't I didn't have any conscience about it even when I was a Christian, because I just said, there's no way that a God that I'll bow the knee to gives a rat's ass about vowels and consonants. He told Adam to name the animals. He doesn't care about language. He doesn't have eardrums. This is not how God communicates. So one word, like to say frick versus frack or fuck or that's just silly. That's the most silliest thing I've ever heard, and yet theologies are strongly built around God not liking certain words.
It's because in the Bible it says, "Watch that which proceeds from your mouth."
We've had this conversation.
Yeah,
it's not talking about the words you choose. What if you spoke French? What if you spoke Portuguese? I mean, it's not the words you choose. It's what you say to hurt and diminish other people.
Sure.
That's what that James. It's a passage in James.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right. Well, good.
Thanks for listening to the show and doing this post.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. She was quite good, and we'll try another one.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Absolutely. See you next time.